Wednesday has a much wider audience than I anticipated. I just got off of a flight yesterday, and the flight attendant at the end of the flight took her hair down out of a bun, and it was in 2 braids, and she took her bangs down, and she said, "You made me do this."
Hi, and welcome to the Hollywood Reporter Roundtables. I'm your moderator, Lacey Rose, and I'm so excited to have all of you guys here. So we will jump right in with what I hope is an easy question to kick it all off. When a fan is to come up to you on the street, what is that fan likely to sort of recognize you from, and what do they typically say? Like, what do you get a lot?
For me, I'd have to say right now, it's all about Abbott Elementary.
And what do you hear?
Oh my God, it's just such an outpouring of love. It's just such a thank you. It is a feeling that I get from fans that I wish everybody could get at some point in their life, because I'm constantly getting a big hug from fans, and they're so different. It's like from little kids to their grandmother. I'm like, what in the world? But it all feels so good, and I'm enjoying it. It's the ones that talk to me in the bathroom. Now that's a problem. Yeah, in the toilet at the airport. Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, thank you. May I continue now?
I had a funny one on the plane, actually, where I was sleeping. Like, it was like a nighttime flight. I was like, full on sleeping, and I get a little, waking me up. And I'm like,
out of your sleep?
Oh, yes. And then she was like, I'm so sorry. She kneels down and she was like, I just was wondering if, you had any advice for an actor, like any advice. And I was like, and I said, just keep on moving. I don't know why.
Quite literally, out of my space.
Yeah. So that was a memorable one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've been recognized maybe twice. Like, I'm just in the privacy of Canada. But when I am recognized, it's usually in Indian spaces of being at powwows or wherever. And then usually it's for Reservation dogs and the impact that the show's had. And usually it's followed by wow, you're so much smaller in real life than you look on camera. And also, wow, they really don't do you justice on the show, which I'm like, hey, thanks.
How does one
I
receive
get that too.
that?
I get a lot of you're shorter in person. I thought you'd be bigger.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just my hair.
But yeah, people will say just about anything to you. Anything that you can imagine. They will say literally what they're really thinking. Yeah. You will hear, people will say to you, oh my God, the camera just doesn't do you justice. Or they will say, I didn't think you were that tall. Or they will say, I didn't think you were that large. They will say just about anything. But the ones that I'll always remember is, I love you and thank you. So I just try not to let the outlying negative. Yes, exactly.
My favorite as a New Yorker is walking down the street, and I don't know if it's maybe De Niro and Pesci sort of established this decades ago, and they let people know. Sometimes just you can walk down the street and you'll just sort of go like this as you're walking and keep it moving. And it's kind of and it feels it's kind of and you just kind of keep walking. And it's pretty cool. Yeah. Those are the ones that feel really good. You feel I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Feels like respect.
Totally.
Yeah.
What about you, Jenna? Ayo?
I feel like I'm kind of similar to you in the sense that I didn't expect a lot of what I get recognized for now, well, it's either Scream or Wednesday. But I'm going to say Wednesday has a much wider audience than I anticipated, at least age-wise. So it is older people, younger people. I've had a couple of weird plane stories too, where I've woken up to notes or things like that. I just got off of a flight yesterday, and the flight attendant at the end of the flight took her hair down out of a bun, and it was in 2 braids, and she took her bangs down, and she said, "You made me do this." So I get stuff like that. But it's always cool when people, are able to, people put a lot of work into TV and film and things like that. So it's really, really nice that people care and appreciate it, or that it reaches people in a way. It's it's always a good feeling. And
the connections that we
definitely.
can make. Yeah. It's amazing what that box can do for people. And sometimes, and I think with all of the things that we're all doing, we all have our audiences and they love what they see. And with social media and everything now, we can get their response so quickly. And for the most part, it just feels so doggone good. I'm like so thankful.
Yeah. What about you, Ayo? Yeah. What happens?
I think the bear probably is the biggest one, and that's kind of like split. A lot of people who are like working at restaurants right now who will be like, hey, this show like was really awful to watch. Like, thanks for making it. Like, you're welcome. And a guy also came up to me in Chicago and was like, hey, I recognize you from the show and I really hated your character. She was really annoying. Great job. I was like, thanks, dog. Really appreciate it. But then also Abbott. I did a episode of Abbott. Yeah. And that I was like, oh, I love this. Like, people love this stuff. Like, so people will be really nice about that. But yeah, I think like there's a lot of projection, beautiful projection. Projection I'm grateful for, but a lot of like projection on the bear. Somebody will be like, hey, thanks so much. Like, I worked a restaurant job. Do you want to hear like the 7 worst things that happened to me?
Not today.
Sometimes, yeah. I don't know.
So you're all here because you've obviously done this sort of remarkable work in these projects. But I guess I'm curious for anyone, and be honest, if you had any sort of hesitation or reservations about taking these roles.
Well, in my personal experience with my show, I did a lot of TV growing up because when I first started acting, I was only allowed to do commercials because I had no connection to the industry.
Yeah, but you first started acting and you were such a baby.
Yeah, I've been acting for over a decade, which is crazy. I was only allowed to do commercials, and then I was only allowed to do TV, and just recently I was able to, start getting into the film world. So I think the idea of jumping onto another show when I had already done so much television already just was something I wanted. My goal has always been film, so I was trying to focus on that, but I think with a character like this who is so legendary and so badass, and I remember when I was younger, actually, I did this show where I referred to myself as the Wednesday of the family because there were 7 kids and I was in the middle of the week, and I remember telling my mom at the time, oh my God, I would love to play Wednesday Addams. When would that opportunity ever come? And then it came later, so it felt like I would be doing a major disservice to things that I had said in the past in terms of turning down something like this, and then also giving Latin representation to a character who has never really been shown in that light before, and somebody who has such an audience, and it's definitely the largest role that I've ever, or most well-known role I've ever taken on, so I felt like I should do it for those reasonings as well.
Anyone else have any?
For me, doing Abbott, Quinta was just like, it's all about Barbara Howard, right? I really wanted to take a jab at Ava. I was just like, I can see me doing that principle. And it would be such a step away from everything that people had ever seen me do before, And Quinta was just like, absolutely not. And I said, okay. She said, oh no, that's a deal breaker. And I was like, okay. And I'm glad I listened to her.
She knew something. Anyone else have any reservations, any hesitation, or was it?
I mean, definitely, I think there was some in just taking on a role where I was like, oh, this is like, this person is unlike me. Oh, I will have to be acting if I get this part. Interesting. And I like started in comedy, and so I think like the box that I'd put myself in was like, cool, I'll be like playing like millennial assistants for like another 5 years, and then maybe I'll get to play like Pete Davidson's girlfriend or whatever. Sorry, that's and I would be honored too. Looking to camera, I would literally revel at the opportunity. But yeah, I don't know. I just didn't really see myself being in that.
You don't have to live like this. No, I mean, lovely guy, funny guy, but
I'm I'm
You're fucking- you're Ayo.
I'm employable. I'm employable. I am employable. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I just didn't really think that Chris Storer, who created the show, would like see me in that space, because he also knew me from comedy and he knew me as a writer. And so I think I was a bit nervous about that. And also, just on a real note, I was like, if I do a pilot and this show doesn't get picked up, like, how am I going to be in a writer's room again? Like, how is that going to work? I'm worried about a check a lot,
which is very real. I'm sure.
yeah.
Especially with the strike coming.
Yeah.
I would say my experience was when I got the offer for Orange is the New Black. Of course, Netflix was this new thing. It sort of felt like, I remember my friends were like, "Is this an internet show? What is it?" And I think that I was coming out of a period that was so similar from being sort of an actual criminal that it didn't feel like such a leap, even though the script was excellent and I was dying to work with Genji. And then that ended up turning into this sort of, for me, my sorority sort of family of whatever, Uzo and Danielle and Samira and Dash and I just got back from vacation, whatever. It just became sort of like my lifeblood. Then, of course, Russian Doll, which I started writing while I was still in the middle of Orange is the New Black, was really my baby. Like, it had felt sort of like my life's work in this sense of, God, this thing's been an all that jazz mess, just existence in general. And then now, of course, with Poker Face, just the idea that Ryan wanted to do this thing with me. I love Ryan Johnson so much that honestly, it could have been bad. And I would have probably just done it anyway for the opportunity to work with him. He is a true genius and mastermind of Puzzle Box. He's an incredible director and writer and just human being. There was sort of a journey there with Ryan that felt undeniable of, we're going to do this thing together. And the joy has also been now that I only play, it seems like, ageless characters who could really be, 20 or 60, it doesn't matter. And I really think that's a sweet spot for actors. And I think we're kind of getting there.
I think it's a sweet spot for women, period, in the industry. It's like sitting here with all of you now and being able to look, past these cameras. When I think about when it is I started, and I always say, it took 40 years to become an overnight sensation, but I think about the addition of women and so many different types of women and the talent the extra talents that each one of you possess. I mean, when I was thinking back to when I started, nobody was thinking about this. They certainly weren't thinking about you and your story.
I'm saying.
But even she's experienced that in your career, where there was a point where people were telling you there wasn't an interest in these kind of stories.
Absolutely. So when you were asking us if we had like any hesitations, there was zero hesitation for Reservation Dogs. It was actually more like me actively pursuing and wanting to be a part of this project, because it is such a groundbreaking series, being the first series with like all Indigenous writers, all Indigenous directors, and all Indigenous core cast. And like, that's literally never happened. And so like, for all these conversations of like people kind of getting exhausted from hearing like, oh, well, it's the first this and the first that. It's like, it feels like, oh, we're checking off many things, but then it's also at the same time, it's like, okay, well, what about the people who still like haven't even been a part of the conversation yet? When I was pursuing and auditioning for Reservation Dogs, I had known of me and Sterling Harjo were like, the Native film community is just like so tiny and everyone knows everyone. And so like we had known each other, and so I'd heard about the audition and that Taika was involved, and I was like, oh my God, could I have like fucking manifested this? and I reached out to him, I was like, just so you know, I'm gonna like submit an audition. And he was just like, oh, like you're not right for the part, you're like, you can't play a teenager anymore, like all these things. And I was like, okay, I'm still gonna audition. And I did, and then I got a call back, and then it was like basically every step of the way I kind of like had to fight, and he was just like, you're right, and I ended up booking the role. But ageless actor.
Well, I just want to say, I have a great deal of identification with that idea of like 40 years in to become an overnight success, and furthermore, the gratitude that comes with that, because you really are aware that it's such a rare moment to have it if, you've been hustling that long,
Sure.
basically.
Yeah. The grind is real in this industry, and it can grind you out quickly. When I hear you talk about the need to follow the check to be able to sustain yourself in the industry, when I hear the voice that says, I want to be heard, I want to find my place, not holding on to anybody's negative thought about you and knowing that you are enough. And for you to be able to survive the industry, being in it from kids, and it's like you're saying, beautiful, wonderful people. I mean, it's like, my God, it's just like, yes, we are a breath of fresh, fabulous air. I love it.
Well, Sheryl, you had said something, I think, in reflecting upon those sort of early years, I think in your sort of Dreamgirls experience, which I'm guessing a lot of people here are going to be able to really empathize with. You said, everybody else was telling me what to do and how to be and how to act, which is why I'm fiercely in charge of my own life now. And I guess I'm curious what that looked like then and what that looks like now.
I liken fame to a machine. And it's a real machine, and you can stand outside of it and look it. But once that door opens and you get into it, it takes you up on different elevators and on different elevator or different levels. It is a different experience. And the more you start to rise to the top, there are more people that are going to tell you this, tell you that, how you can be. And if you don't hold on to yourself or have a firm foundation of who you are in this industry, it will eat you up. And one day you might look in the mirror and not know who the hell you're looking at. And I have seen that happen over and over. I've seen nice people come into this industry and turn into some people, and I'm like, whoa, who are you and what happened? But then I've also realized fame frees people up to be exactly who they are. Exactly who they are. So for me, as a grown-ass woman, it's about knowing who I am. I don't play games with people. I don't play games with myself. And I come to this who I am. Take it or leave it. That's it.
Can you just write a book of quotes for reference on the daily?
But I think it is helpful to sort of hear that.
Well, and it's sort of gorgeous that from everything I've seen, that the version of whatever, I guess, this true you that was lurking and brought out by fame was this extraordinary, expansive person, just says a lot about, your inner child or whatever the hell you want to call it. I mean, it's just, there's a real beauty and profundity to that, just based on everything I've ever seen of you and how you show yourself in the world. So it's thinking about that. It's interesting that the true you, that exposure was a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, I've listening to that, it's so inspiring to hear that from someone who has been in it for such a long time, and the grind of also just how people love to put you in a box, like that you as in all of us, sure. And I was very protected, I have to say, I have an amazing manager and agent who've been with me since I was tiny. Yeah, literally 8 or 9, same people, which is it's rare. Very important, very rare, but I recognize that is rare. This is an interesting story that I was never said this, but I'm I'll say it at the table, maybe. Do it. But I was doing this, I was trying out for a movie. I didn't get it. I don't even think they ever made it, but it was a father-daughter road trip comedy. I remember this. And there was someone involved with the project that the feedback, which I didn't hear from my agents and things, because they were very protective. They wouldn't tell me things like this, but I heard it from an outside party, which I also that filtration system is really important, because there's probably a lot more damaging comments that were said that they filtered out, but this one got to me. And I was 16. I was literally 16 years old. And this person said, oh, she didn't get the father-daughter road trip comedy because she's unfuckable. I was at 16.
At 16.
Yes. And I'm A,
how is that relevant? B, how could you say it? There's so much,
it's
so much wrong
disgusting.
there.
I mean, there's so many stories like this, of course, that I have heard, and I've talked to people about this. I mean, I laugh at it now. I'm what a disgusting pig, but
But how do you digest that and then keep going?
It's funny thinking about myself at that age. I was always immensely confident. I was born, I've always been confident, but of course you're growing up in the public eye, like so it's weird. Like I'll look at photos now, which I remember back then. I'm like, look at paparazzi photos when I was, you're 12 years old and you're like, and back then, like, is that a good thing to see such a mirror of yourself at that age? I don't feel like it damaged me, but it definitely made me very aware of myself, in a way. But I don't regret it. I don't, whatever. It's amazing. And I'm happy I found what I love from a young age because I feel like I've grown. But you were in it from a young age.
Oh yeah, I've been doing this for 40 years and I'm 24 now. So it's nuts. There's all the back and forth through time space stuff. But that's really messed up. I remember auditioning for Lolita, the remake, when I was, I don't know what, it must have been like 15, 14 or something. And it was like, can you eat this banana slowly? And I was like, and I remember that I was already sort of a bit of a tough guy. So I was like, so you mean eat the banana slowly? So I was a little like, but it's sick. It's really like, it's an incredible thing. Ultimately, it seems like your question is one about, stepping into autonomy and what that feels like. And in some way, it lessens the blow of ultimately the horror that is this like wider scope of life in general that goes way beyond showbiz. It's just like a tiny element of it. And it's dark as hell, it is also a business for hire. So it's kind of like you accept the same way like some, scumbag at the office might do some weird shit. You sort of are like, I need to support myself. And of course, maybe I won't do that job. That place is dangerous. But certainly being able to find a measure of autonomy or like, that is like the blessing of a measure of success is you can be a little more selective and wise with what you're stepping into.
And taking your power, like directing and producing. It's so many,
Writing and acting. It's just like, wow.
Even just, I don't know, like knowing of you all and your stories and everything, like the places I feel like where we're able to have like agency, even just as like actors, like I feel like you just hear so many stories of like horror and like I was just so impressed by like you, for example, with like, I don't know, just like expressing yourself and like being like, I have thoughts about this thing that I'm doing. You didn't just hire me to be like a vase. Like you hired me like, and you hired the person inside. And I have thoughts, I have value, I have things that I can bring to this part and to this job. Like I'm not empty. I have agency, I have autonomy, and I have skill also that I've like accrued. Like I'm not just like here to like smile. It's like we're not doing that anymore. Like
are you somebody who has like notes with scripts when you get them?
I have thoughts.
Do you share them? Do you have the sort of confidence and that agency that you're referencing?
I think I try to, but also it's something where it's like I've written and I've produced, so I can I could read a script and I could think about it like a writer thinks about it.
Absolutely.
Well, and I wouldn't know like that. It's sort of valuable even as a director. You're actually quite grateful. That
it's
that they
collaboration.
have
It's not
a sense.
just like showing up and being like, "Hey, you won't believe the ideas I've got in my head." It's exciting. It's exciting to know that I have thoughts. The director has thoughts. The other actor across from me has completely different thoughts. And how are those going to gel together? The camera department has thoughts. The lighting has thoughts, and I have no idea how it works, but I love to know that I'm lit and I'm lit well. It's like everybody is coming here to just try to meet this vision and make something decent.
No,
Jenna,
It's interesting.
what happened with your situation? Because only I've heard you talk about it, right? Were you like
In terms of
Wednesday,
like
were
working
you
on the
like,
show. I feel really, really lucky and fortunate to be coming on as a producer this time around. And I think it's because I was going to piggyback off of what you're saying in terms of I feel like any of the best teams or environments I've been on set have been people who are very collaborative and wanted to hear different opinions because I think it's very easy for people to get caught up in their own. I think a project is best when there's as many voices and ideas thrown out as possible. And with Wednesday again, another fear because I find in television or I've had experiences on television where I felt like my voice wasn't heard. that I was meant to be a puppet, that I didn't really get to say. I've been told on sets, you wouldn't know because you're not a writer, or like just shut up and do your job. From 12 years old, I've been hearing sorts of things like that. So I think that I went into Wednesday with like a really big hesitance for that reason as well. But I was really fortunate enough to be working with someone like Tim Burton, who always he pulled me in his trailer one day and said that he wanted to be a soundboard for my voice. So every day, me, him, the writers, we would get together in the morning and go through sides and go through, what we wanted to go through. But I think also being younger, being a woman, also being of smaller stature. I don't know if you guys have also
I
ran into
identify
that
with
as
that
well,
a
where
lot. It's like
people
being little.
treat you as
For
a
me, it's
child.
also big hair and New York accent. I'm like, oh, so you think it's this kind of IQ.
Yeah.
Copy you.
Exactly.
I'm on you, buddy.
So, but I think that because I'm someone who is very opinionated or very, because I know what it's like to be a people pleaser in this industry, and I know how unhappy or how frustrating it's been in the past. I think when I went into Wednesday, I really put my foot down and made it clear that everything that I had to say, I wanted to make sure that that it mattered and was heard. And it really, I think, as the show went on, we all got a better feel for one another, and it's become a really collaborative experience. And I feel really lucky to be able to join the next season and be in the room early and be, talking about scripts and giving notes. And, that's really exciting for me to be a part of. And I feel really fortunate to work with people who are allowing me that. But
Listening to this, it's very interesting for me. Being on Abbott, literally, because we have such a powerful writer, creator, producer in Quinta, who has assembled a spectacular writer's room, who has cherry-picked everybody that comes on to the show. I literally just have to show up.
Right.
I literally just have to be me and do my job. Last year, people were looking at the show and they were like, we do 22 episodes. Comedy, network comedy show. Yeah. And last year's show was great, and it was wonderful, the things that happened to us. But I thought, my God, how is this second season just evolving and just getting better? Because usually this is where the show would have a slump.
Sure.
So I don't even read my script. They send it to, I swear to God, they send it to me. We have a table read. That is when I start turning
That's
the
the first
pages.
time
That
you
is
read.
the first time I read the script. And usually I get up from the table, say, another great episode, thank you.
And presumably that has not been your experience previously in your career.
No. So that's why this one is so sweet, because there have been those moments where I've just had to say, honestly, we can go all the way back to the beginning, where somebody literally told me after doing the reading, they said, you're just not black enough. Can you just be a little bit blacker?
What is that even?
And that's exactly right. I was always confused about what is the blacker of it all, So now when I'm at this point where I don't have to say to somebody, can we try it this way? I don't think the character would really say that, or this really isn't who I believe you're trying to show the world, And now it's just like, that's exactly what you want to show the world. Thank you. Yeah, it's a whole different place of just like, I go to work now at Abbott and I just exhale. I'm like, okay, what we gonna do? And that's
pretty
just
incredible.
A gift. Yeah.
And Indie Spirits years, when you got up to speak, I was thinking a lot about it after, because you were talking about the movie To Sleep With Anger, which is like an incredible, perfect movie. But it's also a movie that I think about a lot, because I'm like, if this was released like now, everyone would just be going crazy. We'd be going insane. But it's like, I feel like something where, it's people's conceptions of, what blackness maybe is in media, or what it, genre is, or whatever, like had this feeling over it. But just, I guess like it's just going back to that idea of like agency and being able to be yourself in different facets of yourself. And it's also like, it's not conflict is not abuse. Like it's cool
exactly
to be able
right.
to express yourself. It's like it's empowering. It's good.
To know that you will be taken care of on set.
Yeah.
That you will not be abused by somebody else on set. That we can all be there, show up, and be respected for exactly who and what we are.
And then we just get to like do our
Do our
jobs.
thing.
It'd
Yeah.
be funnier. Like
I would like to believe that that is the case on all sets. I'm not sure
It's
we're
not.
there.
It's
I'm
not.
not sure. I mean, it sounds glorious. I do fear that we're not quite there yet. But you're also somebody who moved into the writer's room. Now you're directing. I mean, doors keep opening.
Yeah.
Did that come from speaking up and having opinions about what you want to do or don't want to do and sort of owning your character?
It did. Yeah, I guess I'm one of the annoying actors who comes in with notes, but like,
Wait, hold
That's
on.
not annoying. No, we all have done it.
Okay, wait.
No, we all
not
One,
annoying.
2, 3.
And if anyone makes you feel annoying about
That's
it,
right.
you just
oh no, they
keep
gave me a
moving
job
forward.
at it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's but yeah, I like definitely came in with notes and thoughts, and like season 1, I had like made it apparent to the network that I wanted to shadow, and they're like, "That's great, we'd love to have you, but you're in every episode, and like if you wouldn't like basically do the job that like we paid you to do," and I was like, "That's fine." But season 2, I had reached out to the showrunner and was like pleaded my case, being like, okay, here are all my writing samples, like I'd love to be a part of the room even if I'm going to be there for a couple of
Wow,
weeks, and he
love
was just
that.
like, no, you're part of it, like come on in. And I was only supposed to be there. Thank you. Oh my God, thanks.
Yes.
But like I was only supposed to be there for 5 weeks, and they just kept extending it and extending it until I was part of the whole room and ended up writing an episode with Sterling last year. So it's just kind of been like a progression. I shadowed last season. I have a couple like shorts under my belt and have been like working on stuff on my own time even before Res Dogs. And so yeah, I wrapped the first episode of television 2 days ago.
That you directed.
That I directed. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
I mean, and Elle, this is your first experience as a star and a producer of your show. When did you sort of use that agency, and when do you speak up? When do you feel like you need to, and how has it been? Presumably received very well.
Yeah, I came on. I was a producer from season 1, but
Yeah.
I feel like now it's we're on season 3, which is really cool. I never thought that. Well, I'd never really done I'd like guest starred on like CSI Miami and like, you know, when I was
Right,
a
when
kid
you were
and like did that, but I've never done
some
like
dark
a
stuff
show.
when you were young.
Yeah, I burned a house down on something. I don't know, like an evil kid. But then, yes, I think with the producing side of things, I feel like I've grown with each season, definitely. And now this season, I feel so comfortable in that role, I have to say, which is really, it's exciting for me to feel that and know that I actually like it, because also I could have tried it out and also been like, oh, this is just not for me, and feel like it broke the spell of acting. But I actually realized I feel like it enhanced my experience at acting in character, because like I watch the dailies and the edits, and like it doesn't bother me watching myself in that way, and I can kind of disconnect, and I love the behind the scenes of that all. If I could edit, I love editing. I love editing. I love it. It's like this crazy puzzle piece and watching all the takes, and it's just that side is very fun. So, but like, I mean, Tony McNamara is the showrunner of The Great, and he also views me as a producer too, which is really special, which a lot of people, I think, especially when you're an actor and you're a producer, they're like, oh, it's just like a vanity title that you get.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's very frustrating I know people view it that way. And sometimes I'm sure that's the case, but I'm like, it's not the case for me. Like, it's really not. I am. But I guess, the more you do, the more people will realize that it doesn't even matter what people realize. It's just, it is fulfilling.
As long as you know.
And I know that. And
Right.
I love it. It's really special.
And Natasha, you when you were doing Russian Doll, you were wearing all of those hats. And I've been surprised because I've heard you say a couple of times that doors didn't come sort of flying open after that. People didn't come sort of approaching you.
It's funny when you are the showrunner, the writer, the creator, the director, and the star, and then it's not like, specifically what I mean is that it's not like you're met with and here's a bunch of Marvel movies.
Right.
Like, you've done such great work, and now that you have 13 nominations or whatever, we are now prepared to see you as one of them. We see you as an actress lady.
Yep.
In fact, they're like, ooh, now we see you as potentially intimidating. But to my mind, I think that the male sort of auteurs of, sort of like, I guess I am naming names, like the Bills and Donald Glovers and that kind of thing. I think it's much easier that, by the way, you're talking about all brilliant people that I love. Like,
You're not
I don't
taking
have
anything away from them.
In other words, I'm talking about an industry thing, not a personal thing. But for some reason, it's much easier to say, oh my God, this person is brilliant and fun to watch. Let's put them in a bunch of stuff. I can't wait to make them. So I just think that sort of, there's something still hinky in the idea that it's sort of intimidating that the woman has. Like, in other words, yes, we're talking about some very rarefied, gorgeous experiences of, these showrunners and stuff, or, directors, creators, whatever, who want to hear the involvement and who want to sort of raise us up. Ryan and I really, we made Poker Face with each other, for each other. We just wanted to hang out and make it. So, of course I wrote and directed an episode, but the other game, that sort of middle space, I think it's a little weird. It's not, it is very, I maintain that it is very different for boys and girls. Although I would say the exception might be Larry David. It might be that Larry David is actually not getting a lot of calls from Marvel and stuff.
I think that's probably
Or maybe he is, and he's just like, no thanks.
I would love the Larry David Marvel movie, however.
To hear, actually. But by the way, I don't even mean anything to Marvel or whatever. I'm just saying that I don't suddenly see, the Pen 15 ladies on billboards all over the city being in rom-coms or something. Maybe they don't want to be. It's just something that I notice. And I don't know if anyone else has noticed it.
This feeling, though, of hey, good for you, girl boss. You want to do your own stuff? Keep going then.
It is kind of that.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to be an independent lady? Great. Have fun.
And it's just something that I've noticed. I'm sure it's connected also to still a sense of age. It's basically having a defined personality has been a real double-edged sword for me. It finally was the thing that tipped me into being in the mix at all. Sort of Russian doll was finally oh, now we get it. And I'm so grateful, even though it came late in life. But on the other hand, it's sort of now that you have a defined personality, we sort of don't know exactly how to play it.
They don't see you anywhere. And piggybacking off of what you were saying, that's the second time I've used that phrase, and I've never said it before. Anyway, continue on. Go back to what you were saying earlier about more attention off of certain projects or things like that. It's really interesting too how if you aren't established enough in the industry yet or haven't been independent enough or established enough that they do say that they want to see you for who you are and what it is that you do, and then you go and you join these projects or you join this campaign or you do whatever, and they still want you to fix that box, so they take, they play into what you kind of are feeling and then still want you to be that puppet or that perfect doll image.
Now you're talking about typecasting, which is the inverse of it.
Not even typecasting, just you as an individual. Especially with social media and all that, people are so much stricter on women and how they're supposed to come across. And if a woman says something that could potentially sound negative or potentially is assertive and just honest, they are going to be criticized a lot more heavily for what it is that they say or do, whatever. So when you're not established, people take that as an opportunity to establish you themselves, rather than give you rather than give you the opportunity. And I feel like I personally, coming up in this, I've had multiple instances where I feel like people say they want to see you for you, but then only want you a certain way or a certain.
What do they do? How do you actually fight it? Where does that come from to say, I want to be me? And do you even? And then there's the question of as you're navigating all of this, do you even know who me is when you're being shot through this cannon?
Sometimes you got to play stupid. Sometimes it's in one ear, out the other. Because if you sit there and you talk about it, they will not. But it's you get there and it's can you smile more? Can you have more energy? Can you be this way? Do you want to speak?
Oh my God, I think about that so much. Sometimes I think about coming to set. If I walked in Harvey Keitel, which is kind of my vibe, you know what I mean? I'm sort of very Harvey Keitel, Bad Lieutenant is just a baseline, and not in the bad ways. And I've abandoned those. But just to say, I don't think that I would come on a set and it would be like, are you having fun?
Right.
And I just think that with women, there's this really, it's with the best intentions, but it's so patronizing to be asked sort of like, are you having fun? And like, what's it like wearing all those hats? Oh my God, you're writing and directing on Reservation. How are you doing all of it and starring? Like, there's this little bit of a fucking tone with it.
Yes.
That is like, how does she do it all? I just don't think it would come up with Harvey Keitel, is all I'm saying. And I think I love the work. I love what we do. And I just think that it would make it a lot easier to focus on the work if you didn't have to have the secondary thing of also being like, part of my job is to be like a homemaker in all situations.
Just like navigating identity also, where it's just like, I just want to do my job.
Yeah,
Like every other question. And what's it it's like, I'm happy to be a Black woman. I'm happy to be a multi-hyphenate. Absolutely. It's a given. But it's like, I don't want to always talk about that. Like I would love a question about literally anything else.
So then there's the question. So what would be, in these settings, what would be the ideal thing that you'd like to be asked about? What are people not asking?
I mean, that's a really interesting question. I think it's a fair question. On some level, it's sort of like, what do you believe in? Like, I've come to a place where I understand that part of my journey is to like support the outsider and make a home for them. And it just guts me, the idea that there's something like, we're going to decide if you get, gay married, or we're going to decide what bathroom you get to go. Like, it guts me, the idea, or like, we're going to kick you out of your house for that. And I am in my work, as a writer, whatever, I just want it to feel like a safe home for, like a band of outsiders. Yep. I think the thing that's tricky is to be almost like, it's implicit that you're almost like, the victim of your own story instead of the owner of your narrative. Sure. And I am happy to volunteer with full transparency. I'll give you everything. I'll tell you anything you want to know, but it's my choice to tell you, not the other way around. It's not like a magical mystery tour you discovered,
That's not the lens that people see you through. Like you are allowed to bring that up on your own. And also it doesn't have to be as yourself. Like it can be through your work.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you naturally would be the one. I just had it happen on weird situations. Like, like Barbara Walters or something, being like, child actor, crack cocaine, why? And I'm like, whoa, lady, chill. I'm like, I will happily tell you about my life experience. It's out there. It's like, it's not fucking Google it, it's not a mystery. Yeah. But instead of me being able to volunteer through my work or through the lens of the parts that I've played or the things that I've written, it's all right there for you to see. Why are you making it like you've discovered something about me that now I'm a victim of, when in fact it's something I've overcome?
I think that makes total sense.
That's the darkness.
That makes sense. Well, you reference this idea of this typecasting thing, but also this idea of like, Hollywood sort of sees you one way. Often you're sort of put in boxes, and maybe you'd like to be seen in all different ways. So I guess my question for all of you is what do you feel like you tend to sort of get offered or approached about a lot? And at the same time, what don't you get approached for but would love to do and love to sort of be seen for? Because I feel like this is an opportunity to sort of shout it out there, say like, hey, I could do, whether it's the Marvel movie or whatever it is. I mean, you two are already working on Marvel.
Only the Larry David Marvel movie.
Only the Larry, well, yeah, you were the co-star of the Larry David Marvel.
And it's really just us running around trying to be like, catch him.
I feel like his Marvel movie is like, he's just a guy whose life keeps getting destroyed by like all the superheroes fighting. Yeah, and he's really annoying. So he kind of like becomes a villain.
It's very Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters.
Yes, kind of
yes. I do like the idea of being a Marvel hero. When I see I used to think, you used to have to look a certain way, but now they build these costumes for the men and they just look like whatever. I'm like, okay, just put me in it. And and all of you would be my sister, and all of you would be my daughters, and we would go out into the world and we would just shift shape and morph and just be boss and take over, and then we would hide sometimes and we'd be real quiet in silence, and then all of a sudden it would be like,
Yes, exactly.
We're leaving here. Start starting a company.
Yeah.
I'm available to vanity produce for those projects. I will say. I'll make money off of that easily. Yeah.
Well, something interesting you said about like feeling like you have to look a certain way to like be in the Marvel world. And so like for me, and like by no means am I a bigger person. Like I'm very tiny. I'm very much built like a Mohawk person. But like there was so much pressure in the industry to like look a certain way. And there was always this thought of like, oh, I need to be thin or be fit to be able to be in a Marvel movie. And then when I was cast in one, not a movie, a show, but I was like, okay, now I have all this pressure where I have to like be fit and I have to do all these things. And I was like, hang on, I've already been cast exactly as I am. And like, I could have benefited greatly from seeing somebody like myself on screen. So there's like, I feel like I'm constantly like oscillating between like feeling the pressure of that and then also just like reminding myself of who I am and what my values are. And like, I don't know, I feel like that's been something that has been, especially as like a woman in the industry, something that's always on the table of having to navigate.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you talk about yourself as a Native American, it's like through what we've seen in the old Westerns, it's always like, you're supposed to look like Pocahontas because that's their only frame of reference for a Native American. And in so many ways, the history and the way it's not being taught, we don't know that it's the whole North American continent of Native North Americans, you know, and it's from the whole span of the country. When I saw you all in Oklahoma, I was just like, Indians in Oklahoma? Duh, yeah, of course. Indians in Massachusetts, Indians in Vancouver. You know, it's the whole continent, but we always think Pocahontas.
I want to respectfully just say that for us, we call ourselves Indians, but for other people, I would say Indigenous or Native American
people.
or I say that with all the love because
Listen, I respect that because one of the things that doesn't happen is the greater communication for people to understand and know. You know, and then it's sort of like you can be black and it's like you've been colored, you've been Negro, you've been Afro-American, you've been African-American, you've been black. It's like, okay, which one are we? If you don't have the conversation with people, they don't know. And I get it. Indigenous people, those who were here first. And the most
specific you can get, like, because there's like literally over 500 different nations and tribes across like North America. So like the most specific, oh yeah, of course. There's a really beautiful book called Project 562 by Matika Wilbur, where she went to every federally recognized tribe. Plug to her randomly. But like, we're still like alive and around, and the most specific you can get, like I'm Gahaga, I'm Mohawk. And then if you don't know specifically that person's nation, then you then call them Indigenous, or in Canada, some people like First Nations. But yeah, Indian's more like a joke that we kind of like reclaim for ourselves.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we were getting this idea of like of the industry sort of putting you in boxes, and often it comes from the thing that you've done before, the thing that you've had success with. If you have felt like there are boxes that you've been put in, what are they? And also, what would you love to sort of be? What's the call you'd love to get?
Ayo?
Natasha. I think there's just a lot of boxes that I put myself in, and I will just have a lot of preconceptions of myself. I think even before I started acting, I was like, well, I can't. How am I going to act? I'm like, actresses, Octavia Spencer, Whoopi Goldberg. Ayo is neither of those things, you know? So I think I find myself often limiting myself. And then I get to the place and I'm like, oh, this is fine, and it's good actually, even that I'm here. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I am being typecast. But if I'm being typecast, I feel like it's just as like a regular person.
But you aren't. You got the Marvel call, right?
Oh yeah. Maybe. I don't know if there's an NDA or a drone around. No, I got a call. Yeah, I'm gone.
But everything is that? I guess the question on that is like, is that the sort of the pinnacle, or what is the pinnacle for you?
I think it's great. I think the pinnacle for me would be to make my own things. I'm developing my own shows, and I got a lot of ideas in this weird little head of mine, and I want to also be able. I love collaborating, and I love watching things that are like challenging and like make me feel things. And I think I I don't know what they are until I get them and read them. But I do sometimes have calls with my agents, and I'm like, I read this weird script like a year after. I would have loved a part in this. I don't care if it's a big part or a small part. I would have loved to just be a part of something that is like interesting and kind of strange. Like, I want to do things like that. I want to be in those spaces. Those are the movies and TV shows that I enjoy. So I want to be there. I want to be at the Freaks on Letterboxd or whatever. Yeah.
I love your Letterboxd. I
I'm not
follow you
on
on Letterboxd.
Letterboxd.
That's good. You're healthy.
I know it's like all the movies you've watched or something.
Yeah, you just log them.
Yeah.
And sometimes say your opinions. I've been doing less word reviews because people are giving me heat.
The best social media part of you is your profile
I
on
just
Twitter.
speak a lot.
And, well, is your profile still, I think, says that you are the showrunner of the Kaminsky Method, which is my... And have you yet seen the Kaminsky Method?
I haven't seen an episode, but I definitely am in charge of the room.
And you're definitely the showrunner. Congratulations.
Thank you. I love my cast and crew.
like,
They're all so
the bear
old and
is awesome. I love
awesome.
hit to hit.
Yeah, my profile still says that.
love
I mean, I came up as like a comedian and writer, so I think a lot of that is like you just speak your piece.
I think I'm looking for the great biopic.
You're looking for great
I
biopic.
want because there's so many stories about women, especially women of color, that have not been told, that gave so much to the country and the world. I think I'm looking for that great biopic, a woman with a real story that needs to be told. Yeah.
And what about Jenna and Elle? I mean, what are the things that you're like? Please don't call me for that anymore. I've played that part. I'm done with that. And then what are the calls that you were dying
I
to
like
have
the
come
idea
through?
that it seems like you have a dark bone in your body and you're like, don't call me for that again. I've known you since I was 9, since I was 2 years old. Enough.
Yeah.
You don't seem like that kind of person.
That's the problem, though. There's that, like, there is that. That's the box, like, that I don't have a dark bone in my body. I'm like,
We found
we
it.
found it.
Want to burn a house again?
That's right.
Maybe we're getting you on bad Kaminsky.
Bad Kaminsky. I think
Season 3, and they're really naughty, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I think it was because obviously I was like Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent, which is you can't get like smilier,
Yep.
sweeter, or pinker, or
Bubblegummier,
blonder. So, but I'm cool with that. Like I like that. It's fine. But I think for a while I was probably, well, most known for that. I mean, or just being a child, like being a child, or in the Disney spectrum of being a princess. So I think that's a box that I feel like a couple years ago I really was like trying to shatter, like personally. I don't even know what people thought, but I thought this is all they think of, for me. And I do think The Great, which again, it's like a blonde royal, but it's so turned on its head because it's so raunchy and violent, and we're saying like the C word every other word, and I mean, it's like. I still say the C word.
The C word, exactly. Which does,
The C word
There you
is
go.
coochie coo.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're familiar with the
Yes, it
show.
is. Yes.
It's weird on a period level, but they make it work.
They
make it
totally.
work. Yeah. So I'm grateful for the show because I do think people have. I don't feel the fighting against the child actor really thing anymore.
Jenna, what's yours?
Jenna, and then I think we have to.
We need to know, Jenna.
We need to know, Jenna. Yeah. What are the things that you're like? Oh, you've gotten enough of these calls and you're done. You don't want them, and you're at this point in your career where I'm guessing there are a whole lot of calls, and you're navigating and trying to figure out what should be a yes and what should be a no, and I don't know how you do that.
Well, I think first of all, what a privileged position to be in, and how lucky. I feel like I still kind of, it's really surreal and hard for me to kind of understand and grasp everything that's happened in the last 6 months and what's gone on. But I think for me, it's not necessarily about, when I was younger, I used to do Disney for a while. Now I'm the deadpan girl. People have come up to me and asked me to do the thing, or make the face, or whatever it is.
Remove
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Or if I don't have a lot of expression one day, it's she was doing that thing again. Oh my God, she's it. So for me, but it's never really. I know what it's like to feel like I'm fighting some sort of image or force, or having to make myself seen in a different light. But I feel like I'm in a position, and I'm getting familiar enough now with my work that I know that when I do jobs, I just want to do jobs that mean something to me. I'm more than happy to play characters that are similar in a sense, but if for some reason, I feel like oftentimes there's projects that I've done that I did 2 years ago that I probably couldn't do now. I feel like they're always finding me exactly when I'm in that position, or when I've just a hard character going through a hard time, and that's been my place.
Yep.
I've been doing great. Character's in a great place. I feel really fortunate in that sense. But I think for me, more than anything, I know that I don't want to be pigeonholed, but I know that I also have a lot of different, because I'm not so established as an individual yet, I feel like now is such a great time to just play with as many different people as possible, because every character that you play, you kind of, at least in my experience, take a piece of them with yourself. And I mean, it's kind of like when you're building personalities and you meet people and you like something that they do, or, oh, it's cool that they do that. And you just kind of have this shattered mirror of like bits and pieces of people that you've stolen from to create your own self. I feel like when you're playing characters on such a wide spectrum, or that are so diverse, you kind of learn more about yourself in the process. So I think for me, it's just I read a script, and if I like it and I feel like I'm gonna learn something from it, I'm gonna do it. Especially if it's a challenge. I love to be stressed out and like infuriated about like not understanding everything, because I accept that I don't know everything and will never know anything. And I think I'm just kind of at this point. I know what's right and I know what's wrong, and I'm trying to follow that.
When I listen to all of this, I say, we've all had so many different opportunities, and having been here 40 years, which is a long time, I really have to thank the industry for trying to make way for, obviously they have, for all of us to be able to find space in here. And I'm thankful that I've been able to play the woman on the spectrum, the president of the United States, you know, the principal of a not so challenged school, and now a teacher in a very challenged school. And that's just scratching the very, very surface of it all. But I've been able to sit in a place to absolutely see that what it is we do is trying to be there for us, because we all get to sit here in this time, in different places, different ages, different generations, and all, and doing our thing. And not so long ago, it just was not that possible.
I love that. Well, I so appreciate you guys all being here. I feel like we'll see each other next on this Larry David Marvel movie.
Oh, yes,
or the Kaminsky Method season 7.
We're going to be writing some stuff.
I cannot wait. Thank you all